And so it was so cool because they're doing all these checks of, have you ever done this? And they're looking at me, and the one gal says, wow. And I go, no, I was saving myself up for when I got older so that I have had nothing done so that everything should work.
Just hit the button.
That's my theory.
And you're sticking with it?
I am.
Okay, I think I'm online.
You have to print these, and when did you get them?
10 minutes ago. Thank you.
Something like that. Yeah, yeah, they're good at waiting till the
Oh,
last.
that's too thick. I'll have the thin one, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't get online. Are you online?
Oh,
Oh, it's fine.
it's okay.
See you
Oh, I
online.
can
We're
just
on
watch.
guest, right? VOV
I
guest?
want to review these.
Wi-Fi?
Cool.
There might be some.
Might be some.
Truly,
Small print on the screen.
truly hot off the press.
Hard to read all this. I mean, you're far away.
I don't think you'll see any of that on the screen.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think.
Just this.
Excellent.
That's the
Thanks, big.
I can't get online.
Yeah, just.
It's me crazy.
What's going on, Holly?
No, I can't, oh, okay, got it. Scared it.
Everyone ready to go? All right.
Pencil of power.
Is the door open, Carlina? Perfect.
No, we're not letting people. What's that? This is the okay one?
So let's call the Tuesday, May 12th, 2026 Committee of the Whole. I repeat, Committee of the Whole, not the council meeting. Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Adoption of the agenda for this evening, please. Councillor Blanchette, Councillor Mullock. Any additions or deletions? All in favor? Carried. We will, under 3.1, have a presentation from CAO Yansu around the elected official travel budget, travel allowance, and council event budgets.
Oh, there it is. You likely recall that in 2025 in fall, a panel of 4 citizens reviewed council remuneration and the council travel budget. They recommended a 30% increase in the travel budget and that the village move to individual travel budgets for each elected official. And they identified the following 5 principles to support that recommendation. So one was they were concerned about equity for travel between elected officials, that there be equal opportunity there. They emphasized that there should be transparency to the electorate on elected official travel. They felt it was important for each elected official to have agency over which events they attend and budget for. They wanted council to practice fiscal prudence as they knew this was tax money and there should be limits. And finally, they felt there would be value in having council develop better travel budget awareness, as this is the one line item in the budget that we consistently go over budget on every year. And that's on us. We haven't done a good job of keeping council informed about this. Informed about the balance or the status of that line item. So just as a reminder, as a result of the 30% increase, each councillor now has a $7,000 budget and the mayor has $14,000. That's above average for most communities, as you can see in the slide there. Especially considering that a number of those municipalities have 7 elected officials rather than 5. So where are we now with this new approach? We had committed to quarterly reporting, so on your regular agenda, there is a quarterly report on that, but there was no travel in the first quarter. However, Stephanie has created some projections for 2026 to help council manage their budgets. budgets. And that's where you have a handout, numbers that were very difficult to put on a screen. So they are just projections, and they are based on the type of travel everyone engaged in last year. If the balance remaining is a positive number, that means it's over the threshold for an individual budget. It's calculated from a finance perspective where it begins as a deficit. So I've been doing a lot of asking around to see how other local governments manage elected official travel budgets. And the approaches other people told me about were, one was to limit the number of elected officials attending events. Another was to have an enforced policy requiring the most cost-effective form of travel. One was to limit the number of events each elected official can attend. One was to insist on ride sharing and other cost-saving measures. One was to place the responsibility for any travel expenses that go over budget on the elected officials. And another fairly common approach was like what we have been doing, not to manage it, just always be over budget on elected official travel. So I've taken those approaches and put them into the analysis that you saw on the agenda report. And just for clarity, that analysis is through the lens of the 5 principles that the panel identified. There may be other important considerations which the committee of the whole can bring out and discuss. So option 1. Let's see. The option 1, oops, what happened there? There we are. Option 1 is stricter compliance with Travel Allowance Policy 38. We do actually have a policy that requires the most cost-effective form of travel. We just haven't applied it. So doing that would mean more travel by air, maybe more carpooling, more staying with friends or family when they live in the city where an event is being held. At last UBCM, I saw several local governments had done things like rent a large vacation share home, like a 5-bedroom home, and had their elected officials stay there. So there's various ways to make travel more cost effective. The second option was the method of travel is the elected official's choice, but travel costs above budget are the elected official's responsibility. This isn't as unfamiliar as you might think, because it's like how your per diems are managed. A per diem is intended to be sufficient for decent meals and refreshments, but if you want a really fancy meal at an expensive restaurant, that's fine. But the difference is just up to you. Option 3 is to limit the number of events per elected official, or the number of elected officials attending each event. And those are actually 2 different options. It's a little bit more complicated. A number of local governments, especially regional districts, use that approach, but I haven't figured out how we would apply that. I'd have to do some research into how that could be fair. Option 4, you're all familiar with that option, return to a shared option. The panel had concerns when they looked at equitable access to travel, but especially when they looked at budget management. And finally, option 5 is to increase the travel budget. It brings the village's elected official travel budget higher. And as you can see, we are above average for other communities. But based on the analysis of the options, this committee's job is to develop a recommendation for council on how to manage that elected official travel. So unless there are questions, I will return to my desk.
Questions for Ms. Yansu? Councillor McLean?
Would our location have anything to do with our higher than average travel? Where if we want to fly, we also have to drive, where we're in the middle of,
Yes, I suspect so. There's some rationale for the higher than average budget, for sure.
Paula? Can you convey an understanding of why we consistently go over budget? And from where do we pull that from once we're over budget?
Well, we have our finance director in the room, so as to where we pull it from,
Who are we robbing? I'm guessing surplus, but,
Surplus, so we're usually under on other line items.
and then something else gets cut?
We have an amount that if we're always consistently over, how much are we always over? What's the amount?
the panel recommended going just a little bit higher than what we have normally been at. So the 2026 travel budget is just a little bit higher than what usually we spend on travel. But we were budgeted at what, 32, I think, no, 30 before. And we usually went up to around 40, a little over.
I mean, we do usually travel in packs, and not all of us attend everything. So I think we are meeting some of the criteria, but there's always room for improvement. But I think we just need to recognize that we are doing some of those things that.
but this shows us attending 2 things and our budget is gone. So, like say the local government committee from the Columbia required travel. One of those trips, if I had to drive to Castlegar, would eat up. Or being that I'm on the community forest, I should be attending forestry conventions, Kofi, and yet I don't. And so we don't have any participation in that because then I couldn't go to the NCGLA or UBCM. So to me, it's pretty skinny. If you're like Pete, he has to go to his Yellowhead Highway Trans-Canada thing because he's the chair, right? But this here allows him accommodation, no mileage, to go to Edmonton, right? So to me, this is pretty skinny when you consider the amount of events that we probably should be attending to properly do our jobs, be informed, stay connected. Sorry, that's how I look on here and see 2 events. And, it's like last year I attended more and my travel went to $13,000. I mean, so this is pretty skinny stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say my sentiments exactly. This is really bare bones is what we're doing when you're, because through all of this, I've been trying to rationalize it in my head, and the idea that, well, with some of these other concepts, well, only pick. There's only 2, so you're either going to go for both or you're going to go for one, and I guess what I found in the reality. Like with the UBCM, and we need all of us there. Like it's really important because when we are meeting, doing our meetings, when we're doing things, that's, I find, is where we're most effective, is because what I've seen over this last 4 years is how much we support our arguments. when we are having these discussions with the powers that be that we're, or the entities that we're dealing with. And so I find that it's really important that we encourage that participation from everybody, because you can actually see in these discussions that the sentiments that are being given are coming from the heart. Like, you know, everything that's being thrown at these folks is very important to us, and you can see that we're not embellishing things, we're not doing anything. This is our reality, and when you have all of us there to be able to support these arguments and to build on it, you can see how effective that can be for us. And isn't that what we're trying to do? You know, we're trying to champion any of the endeavors that we're trying to do for our community. And that is our, you know, to me, these are our two kicks at the can. The NCLGA, I find, is really good, because then you're finding out we don't have a lot of opportunity to, you know, I got to say, over this last few years, I read an inordinate amount, but I find that when we're going to have discussions with our colleagues, that's where I find out there's a lot of stuff that I read, and I find that there's a lot of it that's clutter. And there's a lot of it when I'm sitting chatting with these folks during the course of these meetings, or listening to some of the speakers and stuff, you're finding out what are the real hot button items that are going on with other communities, which invariably are our items too. You know, because we're all running into the same challenges with the downloading, with all of these things, and trying to come up with mechanisms. And I find that by us all being there at these things, this is where, when we do like the C2C, and we're talking about the collaboration, you can do Zooms, you can do Teams, you can do these things till you're blue in the face, but there is nothing better than face-to-face, where you can actually see what the body, you know, language of the people you're talking to, whether they're blowing it off, whether they're actually engaged with what you're saying, and you can build on that, and you're trying to build that spirit of cooperation within your communities. I know, I see that like with the C2C, and you know, with just some of the messaging that's come out from this, it's very positive. But the sad reality is this stuff all costs money, and you know, we're doing two things, and you know, we're blowing up these budgets. So I really truly think we're doing the best we can.
I could clarify something, Your Worship. So number 3 is obviously not very popular, to limit the number of events or the number of elected officials attending each event. But the travel costs as presented are presuming the most expensive forms of travel. That's presuming no carpooling. That's presuming everyone travels individually in a vehicle. Every aspect of travel is the most expensive method.
And you know, and we were actually having a discussion about exactly something like this a couple of nights ago, and because it was my thought that for us to be better at this, if we can get an update, you know, of where individually we are, you know, monthly or something like that, just to see if we're on target. But also giving projections like this is a really good idea for us, because it will try and make us more mindful of things, you know, because we've already talked about that. There's cases where we are going to work in a carpool, but there's also circumstances where, you know, like we say, we're only doing 2 of these things, and everywhere that we drive is a distance for us. So, you know, this is, to me, it's, you know, some people might look at it as a perk to be able to do this. I look at this as, this is why we're here, is to forward our cause, and this is the way that we do it.
Councillor McLean?
Well, we can't travel through 2 cars because of quarantine. Remember when we went to Clearwater? Like, we were reminded of that. So, I mean, those 2 guys are traveling together to Prince George. So I would be the 3rd wheel. Nobody wants to sit in the back, and I get car sick, and we might make a decision. You know, so I mean, there are reasons for some of this.
$4.94 when I went underneath the fuel sign today. Yeah, it's still 73 cents or something. My question is for the most cost-effective travel. Did the panel consider mobility issues, accessibility, fears, other things that would limit the cost-effectiveness of flights?
They didn't. There was some discussion around climate effects.
Yeah, I mean, that Dash 8 is putting out way more emissions than, the Lexus. Maybe, I don't know. And then my other question is to the Airbnb or the short-term rentals, the new legislation around who can have that. Certainly Victoria is out, Vancouver is out, Whistler is, well, no, Whistler's in because they're a resort community. But for those conferences that take us to the island and take us to the, not much of a choice there anymore. You can get, remember, was it the first term? We stayed in that, it was almost like an apartment, like a condo, had like 2.5 rooms, and it was quite reasonable per night. It was $275 or something per night.
Yeah, because it was an apartment or condo complex.
Yeah. Budget. Where do we pull? All the questions I had. Does anybody see a recommendation that they would like to bring forward to council?
Would like to increase our I would leave that staff to that. I think that we're doing everything. We're cognizant of trying to save money already. We live in an area where we still have to drive to get on a plane. We do what we can. We save where we can. But yeah, I mean, I think our budget needs to go up. I don't have a number in mind because I don't travel often. So
Is there an opportunity to sort of correlate the discussion tonight and take it back to the panel for consideration?
Gosh. I would
I
assume.
mean, a lot of these say you're not, the panel's not going to be happy. Does not meet panel expectations, right? And so really, we want to encourage and engage with citizenship to give us their best understanding of what we actually do or how we go places. And so maybe there's a sixth recommendation that we kind of take this conversation back to the panel.
I certainly could ask. They were a very thoughtful, really engaged panel and brought a lot of thought and perspective. I don't think I think they really enjoyed themselves. That's certainly what they expressed, and I don't think there would be any objection to
Nobody was
reconvening.
running out the door saying, this is the last one I'm doing.
I did not see that.
Fine, but what are your thoughts, council?
I think that's a good idea to try and bring that. I guess I'm also trying to be thinking of what the future holds for, we've got an election coming up, we've got new folks. What kind of, like, with some of these things, yeah, they're, to me, some of these are just a non-starter. They truly are, because if you're, that, like you were saying about scratching the number two, I think it was, if you're trying to encourage people to participate, the last thing you want to do is say, well, no, we're gonna put your name in a hat and you can go to one of these things. This is gonna be that. It's not really encouraging participation from anybody. And the discussion we've had here is our reality is our costs are high. When we're going to these things, they're always a distance from here, and that's our reality. So that has to be recognized. Is that we're not trying to go out and eat lobster every night like this. We want a comfortable, safe spot to stay that's close to the venue, like you say, because some of the ideas, like with an Airbnb or something like that, it's just not practical for some of these locations. If we were going to Vernon or like Kelowna to somewhere where you're close to, it's not as you don't have these downtown areas where all your hotels are $1,000 a night or whatever. That's a reality in some of these places. So perhaps too, talking with some of these event organizers, maybe in future they're going to have to twig things a little bit, because you've got 2,000 people going to these venues, so there is a huge amount of money. I can't imagine they're all not discussing these same challenges that we're incurring.
And at times you have 16,000 people getting off those cruise ships at the very same time.
Yes.
That's why we're paying 23, 29 for rooms that are within proximity of the Vancouver Convention. If we, remind me, procedure, do we need a mover and a shaker for a recommendation?
I moved.
Move that we send this back to the panel based on tonight's discussion. Moved by Councillor Blanchette, seconded by Councillor Mullock. Any discussion on the recommendation? All in favor? Oh, you have a,
No, I wondered if the panel had thought about our distance to travel, and if they had realized that we want to travel through to like those other mitigating. I wondered if the panel, because they wouldn't know that. Or they should know the distance we are from
They did consider that quite a bit. They talked about distance, they talked about just some of the challenges.
How does this compare with, suppose I could find it here, yeah. Like what are the limitations? How many events? What's the budget? Just to compare.
Well, we don't send any staff to LGMA, which is kind of the staff version of UBCM, which we really should be. We should be sending at least one or two. There's usually one conference a year that each of us attend in our particular field. But
And it's important for you. Hear what other. It's a hard. It's not a perfect.
thank you. Further discussion on the recommendation? All in favor? Carried. Looking to adjourn. Councillor Mullock. Thank you. Think? Yes. Notice on